In fiction, specifically comic books, there are two types of big bad villains. Firstly, there's the main antagonist. This type is the one who appears usually the most often and with the most significance to the hero's rogues gallery and to them as a character. Typically, they are a reversal of the hero or a polar opposite of the hero, but usually treated with a two sides of the same coin mentality with their character writing.
You and I are not so different.
I'm not like you. You're a murderer.
Well, do it yourself.
In the Wanderer series, we already have a perfect representative for this archetype, that of Agent Orange. He is the character Wanderer faces the most regularly and is the complete counter opposite to him in every way while still being his reflective other side, the immovable to his unstoppable. However, there is another side to be worried about here. This archetype is typically either a dark reflection of the hero or some twisted version of themselves brought to life to torment the hero, or put a mirror to their actions and see the path they could have gone down. Examples of this would be Venom, Darkseid, Owlman, Obadiah Stane, Red Skull, John Walker. The previous is the main antagonist, but this is the arch nemesis. Now, like I've already explained, we already covered Wanderer's main antagonist, but now it's time to meet the Mistress.
They call me the Wanderer, yeah, the Wanderer. I roam around.
Hello and welcome to the 23rd episode of the Wanderers YouTube channel. I am your host, as always, Ventura, and welcome back once again to the in-depth series. Don't worry, Lord Slug is still on the way, but since it's been quite a while since our last deep dive into the characters of TOT, let alone the villains, for our dramatic return, we're gonna go straight to the top of the pecking order once more, since Agent Orange hit the scene. So for today's special Valentine's Day episode of the channel, we'll be covering the Queen of Temptation, the Crimson Jagged Dagger, the Lady of Anarchy, Ventura, aka the Mistress, the arch nemesis and fanatical follower of the Wanderer. So, without further ado, let's jump right into it. Much like the Wanderer, and perhaps far exceeding him, the Mistress's background and history is as scattered and full of holes as a piece of Swiss cheese, with a myriad of myths, legends, secondhand accountings, and unreliable sources. Her level of infamy and mystery is so potentially horrible and monstrous that not even Wanderer's Library, the foremost home of knowledge in the entire multiverse of Dragon Ball, holds absolutely no mention of her name anywhere in its vast halls, or literal mountains worth of knowledge. She is such a complete anomaly to not just the cast of the Wanderer series in TOT, but to even us as the audience. The only guaranteed true info we get is through the Wanderer himself, as sparse and scarce as he mentions her name. The sheer act of doing so brings a visible shiver to his spine. A man who has stared down nightmarish abominations and entities before without so much as flinching. The only thing we know for absolutely sure is that she is, or at least was, his closest friend once upon a time. Probably his first ever companion during his prehistoric age of nearly 6 billion years ago. However, from what we can tell, one day she committed an act so unspeakably horrible and devilish that it forced Wanderer to imprison her deep within the Black Vault for billions of years until modern day. The Black Vault is a storage unit hidden deep beneath the library where he stores all his personal items and all his more rare or dangerous artifacts that he wishes to keep away from the world. After whatever happened all those years ago to imprison her in the Black Vault for so long, he also went as far as to purge any and all mentions of her name and face from his vast library, book-burning literal scores and millions of journal entries, as well as erasing zettabytes of data from his personal encyclopedia. This effectively makes Wanderer the only living person in the cosmos who knows the true scope and terror of Mistress, and what she truly did to merit such measures so long ago. Although it's a secret he'd just as well take to the grave. Mistress in the series is always one of two things. A, in control of every situation she's presented in, and B, fanatically in love with the Wanderer. She doesn't walk through life, she glides through it, perfectly and gracefully over every obstacle in her way, never showing as much as a sweat. As opposed to the Wanderer who truds and runs through the muck and grime of our world, enduring hardship after hardship, struggle after struggle. Mistress is always displayed as being a flawless being with no possible weakness, but belying that cheery, charismatic face lies the mind of a soulless, demonic monster. The most disturbing thing about her that people find after spending enough time around her is her eyes. Never a changing expression or emotion, seemingly locked in a constant creepy state of joy, regardless of the circumstances. Her mannerisms, no matter the context, are always sunny and cheerful, regardless of the current situation she's presented in, even during the act of brutal blood-shedding combat. Always keeping the same subtle yet equally unsettling grin on her mouth at all times. Her eyes never seemingly blinking, constantly boring into the very soul of the person who catches her gaze. Even in photographs and videos, it seems like her eyes are following whoever is observing her, with a never-ending gaze. The only instance this icy gaze and never-ending smile are broken are whenever she's around Wanderer, or people she genuinely comes to respect. For those brief flashes of humanity, we see the true heart behind the demon of pinkish red. Much like previously mentioned, Mistress only seemingly has one core faith, loyalty, and one true love, in that of the Wanderer. Her codes and limits are as minute and easy to express in one single statement that's carved into her very being. Serve and protect the Wanderer eternally. She will kill, steal, corrupt, betray, and sacrifice anyone and anything if the Wanderer asks her for it, or if she thinks it's in his best possible interest, whether he knows it or not. She will always have his greatest interest at heart, with no concern for her own safety or happiness in mind as long as he is safe, protected, and secure. To her, that's all that matters. In a similar vein to Wanderer's sole mission of exploration, her one true mission in life, tied to her namesake, is to be the Wanderer's silent guardian, his unrequited love from afar.
In this world, I know that I'll never be the Wanderer's sole focus. As much as I love him, I know his heart will always belong to exploration over me. However, I'm content with this. As long as he's happy, I'm happy. If I can't be his true love, then I'll gladly be the Mistress.
The funny thing about her relationship with the Wanderer, and despite the inherent creep factor and yandere-esque nature of her mission statement, half the time, she's not that far off base. Mind you, don't get me wrong, sometimes she takes things way too far, and has the wrong solution to a problem, but she's always correct in the assessment and root of all his problems. This isn't a situation where she's completely deranged with no basis in logic. She's a master of the mind and people. A master manipulator, yes, but she can read them like the back of her hand, and she never once in the series lies to Wanderer or gives him falsehoods. In some way, everything she says has some basis in truth. In a weird way, she does actually know him better than he knows himself. They are linked in a way that even if it means she has to burn down all the universe to help him, she'll do it if it even has a slight chance to help her one true love. And she'll do it with absolutely no hesitation, remorse, or even a second thought. And she'll do it with a giant fucking smile on her face.
No matter the reason or circumstance, regardless of what, when, where, why, or how, I'll always be there for my Wanderer, to protect him from anything that may come to harm, whether he sees it coming or not.
As it is appropriate for her being the archetype of the hero's dark reflection, the arch-nemesis, everything in her arsenal is a one-to-one with Wanderers. If anything, she's an even more skilled opponent at old magic than even him. And just to remind you, Wanderer is a character that, at its 100%, scales to near Super Saiyan God Goku levels. So, to save time and to not repeat myself, I'll only go over their differences and not retread over stuff you've already heard. To begin with her bread and butter, her most used technique is known as Temperate Touch. She has thermokinetic control over anything that she touches, and depending on her feelings of the thing in her grasp, along with her current mood, the effect of temperature ranges between one of two extremes, either freezing cold or blazingly hot. Along with this, another very major and key difference between the two, Mistress and Wanderer, Mistress is an actually competent combatant and one hell of a tactician. Unlike Wanderer, she has no reservations about throwing hands or interfering when it matters, and to boot, unlike her better half, she doesn't share his weakness of physical frailty. So her punches are just as strong as her ki and speed potential, making her easily Wanderer's greatest threat in battle, second only to Agent Orange, or perhaps even more so. She doesn't share this common weakness with Wanderer for one simple reason. She long ago achieved a state of mind or a transformation that symbolized her inner peace and perfection of self. Zenith. I'll go over this form in greater detail in the Old Magic Key video that's coming up here after a while, but to just summarize, this form is the sister transformation to Potential Unleashed, or Mystic or Ultimate form, whichever one you want to call it. While Mystic as a transformation raises your absolute maximum battle potential out of your body, your strength, your speed, your durability, Zenith on the other hand raises all of your traits as a person to their most optimum level. To put it another way, Mystic puts you at your maximum potential, while Zenith puts you at your most optimum potential, with every trait about yourself completely level and flush with the rest. And, unlike the previous form, this one is an Akai exclusive unlock. It can be achieved by anyone who's reached inner peace or enlightenment of oneself. This form and state of being removes Mistress's need for Wanderer's percentage-based power-up chart. Even if she is capable of using it, which she is, doing so would simply be a downgrade from Zenith in almost every way for her. However, much like her beloved, she has one of the pinnacle techniques of all ki-based abilities. Much like Wanderer, Neon, Agent Orange, and Goku Black before her, the specialized ki weapon. Hers in particular being a pinkish red knife, with the ability of infinite replication and total size alteration. The knife at its absolute smallest can be no bigger than a cell, and at its absolute biggest can be the size of a skyscraper, and she can manifest these blades infinitely, with nearly zero ki or stamina drain. Although, being the same type of species as Wanderer, her stamina and ki are already leagues and fathoms above the average ki user to begin with. She can take these knives one step further by coating them in a ki aura of ki poison, the same ability as Lavender from Universe 9, and we all know how effective that can be on a person. One last important and very deceptive technique in her wheelhouse is her most cunning and tricky to deal with. As I mentioned in the personality portion of the video, people say that her eyes give off this vibe, that they're always observing them, regardless of who gets in her line of sight, even over photographs and in videos. That's because they are. Her eyes are coated with 4 unique special ki abilities that alter people's perception, their minds, and reality itself. A visual cue of its activation is that the bottom of her hair will glow the same color as her knives and her eyes. The first ability of her eyes is the Eye of Gendo. This passive ability makes it where people's minds are naturally coated and their wills damaged over time the longer they maintain eye contact with her, even over photos and in videos. Even dozens of miles away, the effect is still potent. This effectively puts them under her spell, and enthralled with her, unable to say no to any request. And when put to their best, can cast powerful illusions and mental reality warping that's difficult to break out of, to say the least. The second ocular ability of her eyes is the Eye of Ondo. By channeling the previous ability of temperate touch through her eyes, she has the capacity to manipulate the temperature of anything that she's staring at for a prolonged period, either erupting in flames or freezing to ice anything that she's staring at. The third ocular ability of her eyes is the Eye of Kohai. It has the ability to push out a pressure wall of telekinetic force that blasts down anything in its way, acting as a sort of cannon of telekinetic pressure. This ocular ability, when pushed to its absolute maximum, can push down mountains and absolutely level cities. Although this eye possesses a weakness that, if it's used too much, her eye will slowly start to get damaged the longer and more often she uses it. But her last and easily most dangerous ocular ability is the Eye of Misatsu. A derivative of the Eye of Kohai, this changes the gale of telekinetic force inwards rather than outwards, on the thing in her direct sightline. A whirlpool of telekinetic force, creating a funnel the size of a pinhead, where all the ki and matter that swirl towards the center, effectively creating a man-made black hole as long as the ability is active. So with an infinitely replicating knife with the capacity to turn to the size of a skyscraper, the ability of thermokinetic control over anything that she touches, and eyes that can not only mind control people and enthrall them, but also create black holes, it's pretty easy to see why he locked her up so long ago and fears her as much as he does, right? Some of these abilities alone in one person would make them the most dangerous person in Universe 7, and she has all of them at once. With the literal laundry list of abilities I just rattled off a couple seconds ago, you'd be correct in the assumption that she has no physical weakness. Yep. Unlike most every other character I've discussed in the in-depth series up to this point, there is no catch-22. No Achilles heel, no tricky or convoluted weakness. Maybe she really is perfect after all. Well, there is one thing. A single diamond of hope in a sea of coal. Against anyone unlucky enough to be deemed worthy or dangerous enough to meet her wrath. And it's probably the most obvious of all, literally at the root of her very name of choice. The Wanderer. Much like every other comic book villain to ever use on a superhero ever, the Wanderer, her loved one, is her one true blind spot and weakness. Like I said previously, she will do anything to preserve his happiness and ensure his safety, even if he's the one endangering himself. Although he would have to be okay with putting himself in danger, or that you're tough enough to contain him and use him as bait, so yeah, good luck. But when you really think about it, if the Wanderer genuinely put his life on the line, his spear to his own throat, Mistress knows him as a person and knows that if he's in this situation, if he's really about to do it, there is no maybe, there is only if. So to keep this section short and simple, I'll just mention 2 creative details surrounding her, as this video is just about to reach its time quota for today. If it wasn't pretty apparent earlier by my choice of words or visuals on screen, her ocular abilities, as I call them, or in other words, her eyes, are a pretty blatant reference to the Sharingan from Naruto. And no, you won't be seeing the last of Naruto in TOT.
Naruto. Dragon Ball.
Another fun detail is in her pseudonym or alias. Ventera, much like Wanderer's name of Ventura, has a very literal meaning in Wanderer's native language. Wanderer's name means freedom and exploration. However, Mistress's, despite being literally one letter away from Wanderers, means chaos and anarchy. So, finally, after such a long time, we are back. And hey, we actually made a deadline this time, for the Valentine's Day special, of course, which is definitely improvement since the last time with the Swiss video, which is strange to think about. That was almost an entire year ago today. Yeah, not that much content since then. Well, hey, enough dwelling on the past. Time to credit all those artists in today's video. As always, we got a few new faces and a few old reliables. Starting with those old reliables, we have Cade, or Six Pocket Studios, Alinius, Gopaz, Gojiball, and of course, MF. He hasn't been around here for a while, so hey, let's give them all a round of applause. But moving into some of the new guys, we have Ava, or Ava Lug. You'll probably be seeing a lot of her in the future. P-Beans, Flytraps, Kamiseru, Diluvio, Verticular, AFK Anima, and Chaemix. Also, I want to give a special thank you to the co-editor of today's video, Rogue Music. For those of you longtime viewers, you probably recognize that name. He was one of the first editors of the channel before I started editing my own videos. He helped me with the intro sequence, so please give him as much support and love as the rest of the artists, since he did help in making this video. All these wonderful artists helped me out in the making of this video, so you know what the drill is. Support the artists, because without them, this channel still wouldn't be here. And just one last thing before I go. Thank you all so much for sticking around with me for so long and keeping me in the game for as long as you guys have. I value each and every one of you, and I can't wait to see your guys' reaction to what I have cooking up down the pipeline. But, with all that out of the way, one last thank you to you, the viewer, the artist, And of course, Blackscape for helping me every step of the way. Don't forget to take time out of your day to stop and smell the roses. Till our next story, goodbye.